I want to be a writer. Well, that's awesome. How are you going to make a living, though? If you've let others know that you want to write, you've probably been asked this question, or one of several of its cousins. So today, we're talking about how to deal with negativity, not a writing skill, but a writer skill. There's several links below. Be sure to check all of those out. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you find value. Let's jump in. Countering the negativity of others can sometimes be a tall order. In part, the ones who are most negative are either A, people who are close to us, or B, people who do mean well. I mean, usually when they ask disheartening questions or point out how hard it is to be a writer, they really do mean well. And yes, it's hard to be a writer. We agree on that. So next, right? I mean, that's kind of the criticism that comes. Well, it's hard to be a writer. Well, yeah, I know. So let's move on. But the real issue here is how can you navigate the negativity? Disclaimer here, I am not a counselor or a psychologist, and there are definitely times when you need to seek the help of a professional. But what I'm sharing with you are things that I've learned in how to manage the negativity. Now, you won't be able to expunge all of it, and in some ways, you kind of don't want to, and I'll get to that. So we're going to talk about some ways to deal with negative people, and we'll also talk about how all this stuff can help your writing. First, let's talk about some common advice you'll find in dealing with negative people. I mean, one of the first things you'll hear is distance yourself from negative people. And sometimes this can be an issue because the people who are being negative are family members or close friends. And like I said, they mean well, okay? But they just don't speak creative, and they don't realize how hurtful some of their comments can be to question creatives about the validity of what they're doing. Many people don't realize a lot of us do creative things because we simply like it, not because we're looking for a payday. I mean, yeah, a payday would be great. That's not the motivation. And still, they mean well. So distancing yourself from those who are being negative, that really is not an option. I mean, plus, if you just wholesale remove people from your life who are negative, you'll end up alone on an island. Or you'll end up reinforcing the really destructive, self-destructive behavior of just surrounding yourself with yes people. Avoiding or distancing yourself from negative people is more than likely not the right move. Now, if the person is just someone who's tangentially in your life, so they're just in your life, they're in and out of your life, okay, maybe distance or avoiding might be helpful, but I've just honestly found that I don't really have to do that, and I can deal with people in a different way. Another tip you may have heard is just ignore people who are negative. That's also known as the say nothing tip. And while this might stop or like dwindle the negativity, it doesn't really help the relationship. In fact, you may be thinking, okay, their toxicity is damaging the relationship, when in fact it's you who's doing the damaging by not communicating because you're just ignoring them. So ignoring other people when they're negative is not really a great option, especially if you're wanting to preserve the relationship. Instead, I would recommend you open up communication, especially if you want to preserve that relationship, which I'm kind of guessing you do. I mean, let them know, hey, when you say blank, it makes me feel like this. I mean, let them know how you feel. Let them know that they're hurting you. Say it gently, say it respectfully, but say it. I mean, they can't read your mind any more than you can read their mind. Another tip that you will find if you start looking for things of how to deal with negative people is this one of foster compassion. And while you may be the protagonist of your own story, you aren't the protagonist of every story, and not their story, people who are being negative to you. They are the protagonist. And maybe they're just going through a rough spell. Maybe they're having had a hard day. Maybe they're dealing with stresses that you know nothing about. So before you go assigning motives to how other people are wanting to harm you because they're negative comments, which they're probably not really wanting to do, foster in yourself a spirit of compassion. Now, yes, maybe they are just being a jerk, right? Or wanting to be hurtful, but that's pretty rare. And in that case, yeah, those may not be people you want to be around, and you don't want to foster relationships with them anyway. So if you need to distance yourself from them, that's fine. But pursue compassion. And the other thing with that is pursue positivity in your own life. I mean, do things that put you in a good mood. Get the rest you need. Eat healthy. Get some exercise. If you're a person of faith like I am, spend time in prayer or meditation or reading spiritual writings. Do things that cause you to be healthy physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. I mean, this gives you a natural counter and kind of a natural buffer and some fortitude to deal with negative people in your life. Now, those are the common advice. I mean, if you start looking up things, you're going to kind of find like, hey, kind of do this, and I've kind of parsed them down and pulled them together a little bit. But I want to give you some uncommon advice. Before I do that, if you're finding value, please be sure to like, subscribe, interact in some way, drop a comment. If you got a recommendation for a future video, put that below. If you got a question, ask me. If it's too long, I may put that in a future video. If I can answer it, I will do my best to try to do that. So interact in some way really helps other people find this channel, and I really do appreciate it. Okay, some uncommon advice for dealing with negative people. Tip number 1, let your work speak for you. You don't have to go around telling everyone that you're a writer. I mean, if you want to, I guess you can, but you don't have to. You can celebrate writing like wearing t-shirts or hats or whatever, and that's fine. And if you shop at my online store, there's a link below. That's even encouraged, so don't forget about that. You can get a shirt like this one. However, you don't have to talk about writing all the time. In fact, people get tired of listening to you ramble on about writing. When you have a win, okay, share that. Hey, I've been working on this script and I actually placed as a quarterfinalist in the Nickel Fellowship, which is basically the equivalent of being invited to try out for a professional soccer team. I mean, you haven't made the team yet, but man, I'm getting closer, right? Like, share your wins. Or, hey, I invited some producers to read my script. I sent it to 10 of them and 3 of them asked for it. I mean, that's like almost better odds than winning the lottery. Tell them your wins. Let them know that you are finding some success. And if they want to read it, if they want to read your stuff, let them read your stuff, but don't pester them. Just let your work speak for yourself. And suddenly, all of a sudden, you're like starting to get all these accolades and they'll be like, hey, when did you get so good? And that's really what you want. They're not going to be negative about it anymore. Another tip, have a plan. The criticism usually comes when you're just kind of wandering around without a plan. I mean, just imagine any parent when their college-age child says, hey, I want to be a writer. I mean, the next question usually is, okay, well, what do you want to write? And the student can answer in one of 2 ways. Either option A, oh, I don't know, novels, poetry, stuff like that, maybe both, I don't know. Or option B, well, I'm working on 2 novels, and then I'm going to begin submitting short stories to competitions to get some accolades. And then when I've had some recognizable publications, I'm going to re-approach some publishers about a series that I'm planning of a group of interdimensional treasure hunters. While option B kind of sounds a little far-fetched in some ways, it sounds like a long way to go, it's really hard to be critical because that person has thought that through. They have a plan. It's hard to criticize someone who has a plan. I mean, what are they left to say? Like, oh, that sounds really ambitious, or oh, that sounds really hard. Yeah, it's going to be hard, but this is what I'm planning to do. Okay, well, good luck with that. I mean, what else are they going to say? Because it's super easy to be critical of that first student, that option A student, right? Like, I don't know, that's going to be kind of hard. I mean, that answer is usually followed by that question of, so how are you going to pay the bills? And if you have a plan, you can avoid that entire discussion. Another tip, when appropriate, use industry language. Explain things patiently and simply, but use industry language when it's appropriate. Don't be all hoity-toity about it. Like, don't be snooty about it. But if somebody's like, hey, what'd you think about the film? Well, I cared what the protagonist was after, but the story kind of went everywhere. It was a fun ride. I liked it. I mean, you're being critical and analytical and technical and letting others know what you like and what you didn't like, that you know what you're talking about. But don't be a jerk about it, because no one likes those people, right? Don't be that person. But if you can use industry language, it reduces the criticism, because the critic immediately starts to realize that you know more than they do. And if you explain things simply and patiently, it lets you be able to honor them and let them in on a secret that you know something about. And hey, they may learn something here without you being snooty about it. So when appropriate, use industry language. And be responsible. This means in every other part of your life. Be responsible. Spend your money wisely. And people tend to ask less about how you're planning to pay for things. Spend your time wisely And people tend to question less your commitment to things. Live life fully. And that includes spending some time writing and working on the craft. And people tend to not criticize because they see you living a responsible, balanced life. To them, it looks like you have things figured out. You've got it sorted out. Even if you don't, live your life responsibly. Do responsible things, because if people see you being responsible, they're going to criticize less. Okay, Jake, this is good and well and all, but how do I use this in my writing? Like, I get how it can help me as a person deal with negativity, but is there a way I can take this and infuse it in my writing? Well, yes, you can. And it's kind of simple. Make sure your characters don't do all those things I just mentioned, right? I mean, maybe they try to pursue positivity, but they force anyone who disagrees with them out of their life. They only surround themselves with yes people. Okay, that's bad. Maybe they talk a good game, but their work is subpar and they don't let it speak for them. Their work just isn't quite there. They talk a lot, right? But they're just not quite doing it. Make your characters do those things. Or maybe your character really likes to use insider language in whatever job or occupation they have, but so much so that others dislike them. And your characters have no idea why no one likes them. They think, like, I'm really smart. I know all this stuff. Why doesn't anybody like me? And they're having a problem connecting with other people. Maybe your characters are just irresponsible with money or their time, and they don't understand why no one trusts them with anything. Maybe they get some professional help, which is good, but they don't listen to it and they ignore it. Okay, that's a problem. So with your characters, you want to make things difficult for them. And our default is to just put obstacles in front of a character, right? Like, make them late to something, have somebody else that's, kind of in their way. But the biggest obstacle most of us have in our own life is the person looking back at us in the mirror. So yes, you, the writer, work to do all of these, right? On your own. In your own life, work to try to do these things. Be responsible, right? Let your work speak for itself, all those things. But when it comes to your characters, don't let them. Let there be negative people in their life. And two, I mentioned earlier that removing all the negative people from your life may not necessarily be a good thing. And this is why. Criticism often motivates us to improve. I mean, people only change when it's more painful to stay as they are than it is to change. So until it hurts you more to stay as you are, you're not going to change. The change has to be less painful. And when people are negative to us, it forces us to do something different because it's more painful to stay as we are because they're being critical. So you, in your own life, if you're having trouble, right, there's pain, right, and it's getting to a threshold, at some point, that threshold is going to get too much and you're going to change. You're going to be willing to change. That's why it is helpful to have negative people, some, in our life, because they can add in some pain to help us become better. Criticism motivates us to become better. And the same goes for your characters. Let the negative forces in their life motivate them to do something different. It's negative, it's negative, negative. I gotta change, I gotta do something different. And the one thing that they swore they would never, ever do, they finally do. And it solves the problem, and they only do it because of the pain that was in their life before it by not doing it. So removing negative people from our lives makes our life too easy, and we're never challenged. We're never pressured to improve. Expunge the negative people wisely. Yes, some for sure may need to go, but don't just wholesale dismiss anyone who is negative in your life, especially if you know they do care about you. I mean, they just want you to succeed. They simply may not understand how to help you do it. So don't push them away. Let them be a motivational force in your life. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. If it has, please be sure to like, subscribe, bell, all that stuff. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. When you go to tell a story, don't keep all the negative people out, right? Like, wreck your main character a little bit. But when you go to tell a story that matters. See you later.